Hey, hi, this is Greg Lewis. Welcome to our show. Today on Lebanon in Depth, we're going to get into the essence and the details of our solid waste management program. And with me today, I have been joined by our Public Works Director, Mike Lavalla, and our solid waste manager, and here is George Murray. And we believe, all of us, I think, understand where the landfill is. Maybe we don't, but we can sure describe it. And sometimes we might all see it in a certain way. So I just wanted to kind of lift the hood on it and kind of talk about the details of it. There's a lot of complexity underneath that hood, and it takes a lot in terms of the people, and in terms of the tools, and in terms of the actual land that's out there. So Mike, would you want to make any opening comments on our solid waste management program, and then we'll probably get George to start detailing for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We're very fortunate, I think, as a municipality to have a successful solid waste program, and it's more than just a landfill. It's a comprehensive recycling center. We recycle furniture, large waste, metal waste, tree limbs, in addition to all the typical material that you'd find done in a recycling center. Very efficient operation. When visitors come to the facility, they either go to the recycling center or go to the scale house, and they'll drop off their waste. Most people don't get to the landfill itself, and when you look behind the scenes, a lot of activity. We shred the waste, we compact the waste. It is a very detailed operation to make it work well, to get the most capacity we can, to get the longest life out of it that we can, and to run it as efficiently as we do.
It's quite an endeavor. This is my fourth solid waste management system that I've been a manager for, and each one has been different, dramatically different. And Minnesota was a dramatically different place where I started. I think the first one I started as a manager was a 9-county consortium in which it was really based on an incinerator in one of the host counties, which happened to be called Polk County, and it was an incinerator. And then we developed the program. And we moved from being an in-house solid waste operation to privatize that solid waste operation. The next one I had was we were the host, the county host. We had the county landfill and hosted it for 5 other counties, and the solid waste manager ran the landfill site and reported to me as the manager. And the third one, New York, was of course Niagara County, which is the home of Love Canal, where they deposited the waste of the Manhattan Project. That CWM is out there, and it's just a monster of a solid waste operation. And we had the charge under New York law to be the coordinators for the operation. So every one of those things have just blown my mind. And our operation here is right in there with it in terms of this whole systems we have around the border state, and the complexity of it. We're regulated, and yet we have to be good service, and we're trying to preserve the utility. So with that kind of setup, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the field. George is we're really so pleased to have George with us. I know Mike and I had the pleasure of interviewing George, and we're lucky enough that he accepted the opportunity to come to this position. So George, let's get into the detail. I don't know where to start. You certainly do, but where do we start? And let's try to help people see what's under the hood there at solid waste.
Well, regionally we serve 24 towns, 12 in each state, and the Vermont side is what's called the Greater Upper Valley Solid Waste Management District that was formed back in the late 80s and early 90s. And on this side, it's mostly Grafton County towns, with Plainfield and down in Sullivan County and a couple others. And the population is 76,000 people. So it's a pretty broad area with a good population to support the facility. Most of the waste is delivered by the private sector. Very few if any towns have town-wide garbage pickup, although Enfield and Plainfield do, but it's not the norm in this area. And we have a facility that's been there since 1950, located just south of Home Depot and Four-Year Golf Course, across from the Pike Asphalt Plant on 12A in West Lebanon. We just finished lining another area, Phase 2C of the facility, that's going to give us a capacity for at least 12 more years in that phase, with the capability of expanding to a Phase 3, but also to go back and retrofit the existing filled areas to provide more capacity. There's been a lot of dates thrown out as far as life of the facility, and most recently a study done by a company in Vermont for the area used 2030, although we do have capacity from what our engineers tell us to 2090. The next phase that we get into is going to be a little more expensive than our phase we're in currently because of bedrock, and we have to work around that. But we do have the capability of expanding with various engineering practices to refill valley between the unlined landfill and the lined landfill to provide more space, and also build up sidewalls to provide more space in the facility.
You know, and I thought that those differentiation of the dates can be confusing to the public, because the public were saying this 2030. And I think the implication was in their analysis, as we read the study, all three of us have read it and others have read it, and we attended a presentation that was provided jointly, was that the 2030 was basically a demarc date that we would then have to look at a more expensive move to our next sections. But of course, the field is changing in technology and in engineering, how we approach things, the kind of analysis is there, you know. So, you know, in my experience, that really, you know, I think the longer term of the 2090 is accompanied by cost benefit risk analysis, but it's certainly not, you know, the longer we stretch this situation out, and because I think the world's going to change, and I'm not sure where, but I think that will give probably a more prudent look, as you look longer term, at what our choices become. The other thing I will say about this is that I talked to our finance director, Lynn Jarvie, about our backup. And I think what we have done is we have managed the reserves very well. And those reserves become our safety net.
Yes.
And so we have, we're not people that walk out on a limb. We're people that plan. We prepare for alternatives. We create a reserve and manage all our reserves, and so that we will have the resources and the knowledge as well as to when and if we pivot. And I think that's really two critical factors here, is the fact of a long-term decision. I don't know how many times I've been told in management philosophies that should be applied in our current complex, challenging world is long-term situations are better than short-term. Because the quick move to do the quick thing, oftentimes there are unforeseen consequences of any move you do, and if you have something where you have a little more certainty and you have a little bit of longer term, think long term, that you will have a better result for your community. And yet, you'd always have to make sure you got the way to pivot, and that's what we've done here. So sometimes people don't understand that fact. That's what's nice about Lebanon's management program, because that's how we plan for the day, but we plan for tomorrow. So I'll make mention of that. Mike, any reactions to comments by George at this juncture?
Yeah, the 2090 number, that takes into account a lot of different factors. One, actually remining our unlined landfill, removing waste from it, pulling out the recycling, actually lining that area, and then putting waste back in it, taking advantage of, as George mentioned, filling in areas that are open now. It takes some relocation of some utilities to be able to do it. Expanding phase 3, maximizing the areas that we have there now. We have seen a trend where recycling, that's gone up. We've had really good use of our facility. The waste stream itself, we've seen the flow drop off. It's not just for us in this region, it's a nationwide issue. So I think when we discuss and when you mention about the long-term planning, as we move forward, we're looking at the reality of the flow rates and what's happening in the recycling markets and everything. So we're adapting as a facility to still be on the edge, on the cutting edge, to maximize the efficiency. Part of what we do, it benefits the general fund because we're able to return a host community fee back into the general fund in addition to supporting all of the enterprise fund, which the solid waste fund is. So it's not, when you drive up to it, you throw your garbage away and you leave. Under the hood, behind the curtain, there's a lot more going on to make sure what we're doing there meets all the regulations, plus meets all the needs of our community, benefits it, and the region.
One of the, I've been recently in my presentations, I've been addressing that what you have to do in a complex world is concentrate on a limited number of things. You have many concerns, but in the course of being able to influence things, there's your ability to influence is really, there's a certain amount of just boundaries in the scope of what you can influence versus your concerns. Because we have great, we have hundreds and thousands of concerns, but really what can we influence? And I think what I boiled it down to for my kind of advocacy as a manager is infrastructure. We could do infrastructure. Could we do a collection? Could we get into meeting the same level of a collection officer operation as the privates do? With a great deal of expenditures that would be involved to basically equip up and then train personnel, and then we all know the cost of operation of that thing. But we wouldn't be in our strength area. We would be in a new area. We'd be in a new line of work. So when we say we know our infrastructure, and that's important to us, I think that's critical because we do know this site, where we work this site, and we have been working the site for a long time, and there's the good, the bad, and the ugly about any site, and so we are intimately understanding the site more and more, and as we apply things to that, so I think that's a real thing. To keep things safe and protective and be secure, that's another thing that we're our fundamental thing, and that's kind of we're involved in. We might want to talk about the odor control and that challenge that has been facing and has been worked upon and addressed, and is now waiting for another move. And the other thing is people. We're managing a utility for the benefit of the people of Lebanon, and of course we're engaged in other people that are not of Lebanon, but that engagement all comes back to the primary mission. Our goal is to serve the people by providing them with a utility that meets their needs, and to the extent that facility that utility can provide those needs. I mean, we're not going to be illogical and create something there that's not. But I think taking on the infrastructure, that this is a piece of infrastructure, a piece of utility. Maybe we should comment on the odor challenge.
Well, we've had. I think certainly everybody understands or knows that there are odors that come off of that landfill. And what people are smelling is hydrogen sulfide, which is a result of interaction of the material in sheetrock and drywall. As it decomposes in a landfill, it produces hydrogen sulfide. And it's a factor at a number of landfills all over the world, actually. So in order to take care of it, previously and currently, the landfill is just venting the gases to the atmosphere, which is why we have the odors. And last year, at the end of the construction season, we just put in 8,000 feet of collection piping and 12 gas wells that are 3 feet in diameter into the landfill. That's all interconnected to a main pipeline, just as a sewer or water line. And Monday, we're signing a contract with an entity to put first a landfill gas flare, a permanent one. And that will essentially put a vacuum on the landfill and start collecting all those gases and initially burn them in a big flare. It looks like a Bunsen burner from chemistry class on a big size. And from there, we'll be able to gather data to determine how much gas and the quality we have. And we have vendors that are very interested in putting an electric generator in a gas to electricity facility in, or possibly cleaning it up and selling it as natural gas. But the odors are there. We've put in 3 temporary solar flares that are operated off of solar panels and have a spark plug in that keep the flame burning. That's helped somewhat. And from everything that we've understood and looked at and researched, that the flare with the vacuum system, the gas collection system, is going to take care of a good majority of the odor problem.
I'm looking forward to that. And another part of the equation is the emerging technologies. As we find technologies that, and we're not in this alone around the world, because there's so many. It seems like, I mean, it's just an incredible in-depth approach around the world about this, and trying to pick the best practices.
Yeah, it's a difficult science. We just had an issue that we met about this morning. We have our whole landfill under the new part since the middle 90s has 2 protective plastic layers underneath it that collect all the water that comes through the garbage, and that's pumped and treated at the city wastewater treatment plant. And with all the rain we had last week, that created a lot of extra leachate, it's called, that causes problems, and we're dealing with that, just a lot of a cause and effect that we're still learning with what we have. But with gas, the leachate, and just the standard practices within the industry, they change quickly, and new technologies, as you said, emerge that work.
And I found that it's constantly changing, as you say. You know, they say they turn out technologies. Used to be it was measured in years, but now it's not measured in years. It's measured in very close proximity into days. It's really quite amazing what's going on. I mean, there's trial and error going on, and then experimenting and scientific experiments, but things are changing around there. Yeah. I have a sense that New Hampshire and Vermont are the 2 states that are taking different, and probably not abnormal that these 2. I'm not, I'm still trying to get used to the idea that if I step across the river, that I'm in one way, and then if I step across the river, I'm another way. But so being a border city, but they do seem remarkably different. And any comments on what's the difference between the approaches to the field in Vermont and the approaches to the field in New Hampshire?
Well, in Vermont, they've taken a very hands-on approach to solid waste management from back in the early 80s with passage of a bill that required solid waste districts to be formed. All the town landfills closed. Each district had essentially followed county lines at the time. Had to find a landfill site for them to develop. And also the state mandated certain things that had to be recycled. They banned tires and yard waste and different materials from being buried to encourage recycling. And just recently passed Act 148 that is requiring all food waste be removed by, I think for everybody by 2020, if I remember my dates right. All the haulers that provide collection services have to also provide recycling services to their customers. So that, in this evolving mix between the two states and our customers, we're probably going to see a reduction in waste from Vermont, which is about 1/3 of our waste because of the food waste and the additional items.
So when we take different policy approaches, it's all interconnected. I mean, it's so artificial to think, you know, that the legal boundaries mean something. I mean, you know, in terms of human behavior and moving things across. But different policies mean something, but you push one policy in one place and it will pop up another place.
Correct. Yeah.
So it always has these constant ebbs and flows about the different, especially when you're a border city. I'm thinking about all the disposal issues that we've heard about, and people maybe heard about is recycling. You know, that I have these recyclables quote, and what we do with the recyclables and how we do it, and then I hear people talk about the organics, where I've heard a lot of really tense expressions that organics need to be removed from a waste stream and put into another management stream of some sort. And then we heard about the household hazardous waste, where every household has a certain amount of household hazardous waste, and the nature of the products that are used in a household, and how to dispose of them. Comments maybe on the recyclables, on the organic issue, and maybe on the issue of the household hazardous waste issue, and how what might be involved in terms of our situation, and not ours, where else that people would try to deal with this.
Well, recycling, the facility in Lebanon that the city provides is still the old school way of recycling. You come out as an individual with your materials and you put them in the different windows and bins, the paper, cardboard, tin cans, aluminum, and plastics. The newest manner of recycling is called zero sort or single stream in the industry. Casella markets it as zero sort. All the recycling goes into one bin, is collected in the same type of trucks that collect garbage, and is brought to a processing facility where a lot of it is sorted mechanically with the new technology that's been developed, and is a very efficient way of handling it collection-wise, but more expensive, obviously, sorting it.
Yeah.
Whereas the old-fashioned way is more expensive to collect it because you're individually driving that 1 pound of recyclables some distance to a recycling facility, and then we process it individually and sell it. And we've been constantly watching pricing on single stream. People have asked us why we don't go to single stream, and it is more expensive at this point in time to do that. We lose all the revenue that we currently make from processing the recyclables, which is about $100,000 a year. And zero sort, you have to pay to have that process, plus you have to transport it. And you don't. Some places will provide some revenue.
I noticed we bale.
We have a baler.
What do we bale for people's attention? I saw they're amazing. We got a new baler too, relatively new, I guess.
Well, right now we bale our fibers, we bale our plastics, the aluminum, tin cans.
We're so it's the baler that we originally had. We just replaced this baler last year. Was great when we were at about 300 tons a year, and now we're up over 1,000 tons a year, and that baler was wearing out quickly.
Yeah.
And this newer one is much more substantial and able to handle the flow.
That's good.
But
That's good. I had some we had some responses from some citizens how much they complimented the people working at the landfill for the customer service they received when they went out there. They really gushed at literally the people that were out there were so friendly and willing to be of assistance to them and when they came out in the situation. And it's a phenomenon that becomes a social place.
it does.
Where else I've had this experience before in my other jurisdictions that this particular way of approach, which you said, as you said, is old school, but it becomes a very social place as well. So it's a really interesting phenomenon of trying to manage and serve the public interest of managers all the ways, but then becomes a social thing, and it's an interesting thing. How about we have our last 3 minutes on the organics. I guess restaurants have a lot of food stream. I think colleges have a lot of food stream. Hospitals probably have food stream. Individuals have food stream, but probably not a real high quantity.
Well, overall, there's about more than 30% of the waste stream is organic material. And largest, obviously, is from the commercial establishments and the institutional establishments. And one of the problems we have in this area is the lack of facility to process that, compost that, on a large scale. We have a lot of small places, but and that's what Vermont is tackling right now. Where are we going? Where is Vermont going to take all this?
They're being mandated now.
They are, and we've had requests to take it. We'll take it, and we do compost biosolids from our treatment plant from Hanover and mix it with leaves and ground up wood that we grind on site and process it for about a year, let it compost, and we use it as topsoil on the landfill itself when we don't use an area for a while. But that is an issue that's going to be confronting everybody as to where to bring it. But I think somebody will come up with a solution. It
seemed like it was really the trouble is there was costs of trying to create an operation that could operate on a high volume and do that. Now, household hazardous waste, that's a similar challenging place.
It is, and we currently, the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Commission handles the program in this area. People don't understand that. They think Lebanon does it, but we are only a host site for their program twice a year. There's another one coming up the third Saturday of September for people to use. And we've, as a regional group, we've been trying to find a place to put a permanent facility in. And the town of Hartford has a facility that could be renovated, but the cost is an issue, and that's what everybody's trying to tackle right now. So.
Well, maybe some of the conversation we had a week or two ago in our closing was about whether the changes regionally, whether there should be changes, and I guess my reactions to some of the situation was how we're managing it to look at long term and where it will go. It would to say that we would make a commitment to make a change somewhere else from a manager point of view when I have a longer term perspective that will may or may not work as different things evolve. It's premature to be pulling a trigger on something there, but there's somewhat, well, let's do it now, do planning now so that we're ready. I think that's just, it doesn't seem to have the kind of logic of project planning that would allow it to pull the trigger. There was something about the question of us that our odor control. Well, I think we're tackling the odor control in the manner in which we are with the piping and the flaring, and then we're all still going to evaluate energy utilization and see where that if that's a viable possibility. So that doesn't seem a turn on. There's something about attaching the liability of other municipalities, get them to sign on to our liability exposures. I had in New York to have to deal with landfills and the exposure for having landfills. Our reserve strategy of maintaining reserves so we can pivot all at work, and so we have our safety net being built into that program versus trying to get others to to buy in and sell off. I think they'd have to have some real monetary basis for them to make a choice like that. But I don't know the reactions about this regional thinking here and things we should be thinking about in Lebanon in dealing with the regional discussion, which I think will continue to be ongoing, especially because I think Vermont, with their changes in policy, is really under some pressure to figure out how to do this. Any comment, Michael?
Well, I think we have been engaged with all of our partners around, the people that deliver waste to our facility. I think the engagement that we've had and we continue to have will be good, because it will allow us, as we plan, at our facility and plan for the future for Lebanon, to better map out how we're going to do it, how we're going to provide that service to the Lebanon residents, and, as you mentioned, to the other partners in the region.
Yeah. George, as we close, any pearls of wisdom? Solid waste.
I hope I take care of the odor problems, because I'm going to have trouble at home if I don't.
That's good. That's good. Well, on that positive note, we want to thank everyone who joined the show today. We hope it has given you a little more information about what's under the hood in terms of the solid waste management operation in Lebanon. I think this is an operation that is very pragmatic and very planned, and we got some strong work ethic going on, and I think it's a valued operation, a valued utility that we intend to be good stewards. So we want to thank you, and we remember to recycle, reuse, and all the, what's the other R? Reuse. Yeah. And I try not to buy stuff. Let's buy different types of packaging. Because somebody said the real blame is the manufacturers ought to change some of their ways of doing business, so that we wouldn't have to be front end figuring this out versus the end game. But those are questions for us for our future, and please, let's all try to protect our environment, and we will continue to try to do the job for you as the residents of Lebanon. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.